Okay, so next thing we need to do before we can test this out is we need to create another YAML file which defines the queue that we just said here, okay? So this queue is not yet defined, so we need to define it. So let's right-click on default, new file, and hit and say queue.yaml, okay? And now we can specify, for example, the total storage limit. So this will be the amount of memory we want to allocate to store items in the queue. So this will be total underscore storage underscore limit colon, and then the amount of simply megabytes we want to assign to this queue. So I'm just going to say 256M, so 256 megabytes. And then the actual definition of our queues. So this will be queue, colon, and then we can hit the dash, and the name of the queue will be parser. So it needs to be the exact same thing we have defined here. And then the rate will be 1 per second. So we're going to be launching 1 request per second. Then bucket size is going to be 1. So each second we're going to be launching a batch of files, and we're essentially saying that the batch or the bucket is of size 1 task. And then we need to also specify the max underscore concurrent underscore requests to 1 also. So how many of these at the same time do we want to be doing? So I'm going to say 1 at the same time, because we don't want to, you know, if this was 2, then this would mean we're launching 1 per second, but 2 in parallel. Okay, so essentially we would be launching 2 per second. So I want to keep this at 1. And then the target, so which module is responsible for handling this workload. So I'm going to say that the module is also called parser. Okay. Okay, so this is all done. We can close out of that. And there's actually one more thing I want to add here. So this URL. So I need to add the .strip method. And this is because if I go back here and open this file, each line is composed of the actual URL, and then each line also contains a line break. So this is why they're not all together, stuck together. So each line is the URL and a line break here. So this line break is invisible, but you know, we can actually see it because they're all on separate lines. So what the strip method does is it strips out, you know, extra spaces and line breaks and all that, okay? So this is a handy way of cleaning this string. So we know that we're only getting the URL, okay? So let's see if this works, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to send ourselves a request, and this request will go to this path. So let's say localhost and this. And obviously, you know, we're not rendering anything, so we won't see anything, but we will be able to see in our console whether or not this is working. So let's hit enter. And again, it's asking us to log in as an administrator, because that's what we defined in the parser.yaml. We defined that the login must be as an administrator. Now, this is just a simulation because we're in our local development environment, but in real life, this would actually be a login screen as you would see to your Google account, okay? So we're going to hit sign in as administrator, because if not, it wouldn't allow us to access. Okay, and let's see our console. We see that we're adding a bunch of tasks into our console, and they are all returning a 404 because obviously we still haven't implemented that request handler, but we can see that this is working, okay? So I'm just going to stop this. And actually I've made Python crash, but you know, we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so I'm back and running, and I'll make sure to not do that again. But anyway, that was just to demonstrate that this is in fact working, okay? So now we need to implement this parser parse URL, okay? So let's go back to our parser.py and copy this and simply substitute the string with this. And let's say that it's going to be the same file, but instead of load URLs, it's going to be parse, okay? So now here we have to create the parse class. Okay, now since it's an internal request being sent to this request handler, we also have to extend it off of the search request handler And by default, these requests that are being sent are of type post. So we need to type def post. Okay. And the only thing we're sending ourselves is this URL. So we have to say URL is equal to self.request.get URL. Okay, good. So let's simply just print out this URL to see that we're not, getting a 404 and that we are receiving our URL. So let's say print URL and see what happens now. So I'm going to hit the same request and go to my console. And we see that we are printing out our URL. So this is all working really nicely. So in the next videos, we will actually learn how to build a parser. So this is going to be extremely exciting.